Hi everybody, in this video we're going to talk about creating conversation scripts, how you go about adding them to your conversations in Osiris, and how you actually deploy and use the conversation router. So to start off, we're going to go to the Osiris developer portal and add a new application to Osiris. So testing Orion application is an Orion application that we created as part of a previous video when we were setting up our Orion account and our organization. So we're going to add this to Osiris. So now that application is available in Osiris, and you'll see here if we go to the application store, it's now appeared in the application store. So let's go to and edit the application and launch the Node Network Builder. So the Node Network Builder allows us, as we described previously, to represent and architect our conversations. So we create nodes to represent different segments of conversations. So there are three different types of nodes. There's entry nodes, dynamic action nodes, and static action nodes. Entry nodes can be seen as some dialogue that the user will say. So think of a conversation with somebody and somebody asks you a question, who are you? That's how you would architect who are you as an entry node. And an action node is a response to that question. So who are you would be the entry, my name is Osiris would be an action node. A static action node is a response that's always the same. So for instance, an example where there would be an entry leading to a static action would be who are you? My name is Osiris. It's always going to be my name is Osiris. We don't need it to be dynamic, it's static. Dynamic action nodes is when the response can be different. So you'll create a script that generates the response. So you might want to call an API to get the weather forecast and tell the person the weather details in the current area. So we're going to start off and we're going to create an entry node. We're going to call it test entry node. We're going to give it a description. It can be anything. I'm just going to put in gibberish. Expected input. So this is what we expect the user to say. So we're going to expect them to say hello. Actually, no, we'll get them to ask the question, who are you? Example user input will be who are you. So this is the example we'll show the user they can say. Now, the acceptance threshold is how close of a match from 0 to 100% the expected input should be to what the user actually says. So we're going to say 99%. We'll leave the learning threshold to 0. We want to show this entry node in the examples, which we'll show in later. And is it a start node? So start nodes are the entry point into a conversation. So they're how you would start a conversation. So not all entry nodes would be at the start of a conversation. So hello there would be a starting point, but you wouldn't have a starting point of my name is Shane. You wouldn't start a conversation with my name is Shane. So we say a start node and we save the changes. So if we open up the node network visualizer, we see that the green nodes represent entry nodes and it has appeared here on our visualization. We can move it around and play with it. So we're going to create a static action node here, and we're going to call it test static action. So test static action, some gibberish. Now loading message is the response. So we're going to say my name is Osiris, and we're going to include start nodes. So include start nodes means it will loop back to the start nodes upon completion. It means that it's not a continuous conversation. It allows you to start the conversation again, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So we'll save changes. So now you see we have two nodes in our visualizer, and we need to join them together. So we're going to link the entry node, we double click on it, and we double click on the action node, and we establish a connection between them. So now you see in our node network visualizer, we have a connection between the two nodes. So if we open up the conversation portal,
you do not currently have any subscriptions on your account. Please visit the application store to subscribe to applications.
So here we have to actually subscribe to our application. So we'll click subscribe and go back to the conversation portal and start conversation.
Connection to the Osiris Conversation Network has been established. You're all set and ready to go.
So you see our test entry node has appeared here in the examples. So I'm going to say who are you, which is the entry node we created, and it should respond with hello, my name is Osiris.
My name is Osiris.
So you see that we created the action and they've linked together in a conversation. But we can chain conversations. So let's create another quick entry node here, and we're going to call it just whatever we want. Our expected input, what are you doing? Or we'll say, how are you today? Example input will be how are you today? Again, our acceptance threshold will be at 99%. We'll show on examples, and it's not a start node this time. Save changes. And we'll create an action, a static action node. Again, it doesn't matter what they're called. and we're going to say, I'm feeling pretty good today. Thanks. And include start nodes. Save changes. So now we have the two nodes here, so we need to join them together. So we're going to create a connection between this node and this node. So you see they've joined together. But now you see we have two different trees of conversations. But we want this to be a continuous flow. So we're going to join this to this. So we're going to create a connection between this guy and this guy. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake there. I meant to, I connected it to the wrong one. Apologies. So we'll just go back to the network visualizer here. So, which one is it that I have to connect it to? So the one that starts with a 5. Ah, okay. So that's fine. So we want to actually connect this one to this one. So now you see we'll have a continuous conversation. So you see here that we've linked the connections together. So now if we go back to the conversation portal and we refresh the conversation.
Connection to the Osiris Conversation Network has been established. You're all set and ready. My name is Osiris. I'm feeling pretty good today, thanks.
So there's a static conversation. It's always going to be the same no matter what the user says. So the main purpose of this video though is not about static conversations but about dynamic ones. So now we're going to go and we're going to create a dynamic action node. And I'll show you how that works. So we go back to the developer portal, go to our node network builder, and we're going to create a dynamic action node. We're going to call this test dynamic action node. We're going to have a description. We're going to call it test. Our loading message will be 1 moment please, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And include start nodes. Save changes. So now you see a red node has appeared. The red one are dynamic nodes. So now we're actually going to go and we're going to write our script. So to write scripts, the important component is the conversation router. The conversation router is a system that, so when the user invokes a dynamic action node within the conversation and a dynamic action node is hit within the conversation, a request is sent to the conversation network. And you can have as many conversation router running within your conversation network as you want. And those routers will process that request and execute the scripts and return the responses. So before we get going, we have to create a config file for this router. So we're going to create a new text file. We're going to call it config, and we just want to change the extension here to .json. It can be whatever you want, but just for the ease of read, we're going to say .json. So now we're going to edit this file, and we're going to create our config. So when we're specifying the config, there's a few things we have to specify. We have to specify a provider. So the provider is how we're going to get the conversation scripts. Who's going to provide them? So there's two current providers we can use. There's Amazon S3, which you can use as your provider, or your local file system. So just for the purpose of the demo, we're going to use a local provider. So we're going to say local provider. Then next, we're going to say where our root of our provider is. So we say local provider root. And then it's expecting a file path. So we're going to use this repo folder as our root. So we're going to copy this path in, and we'll just change these slashes here. So that's our repo. So the next thing we need, and we're going to talk about these in a minute, are Orion public key and an Orion secret key. So what this means is you need to get a system account for your application on the Orion website. So if we go back to the Orion website, we go to manage applications, we manage testing Orion application, and we see we've no system accounts, so we generate one. So now you see we have a public key and a secret key. So we're going to use these keys in this config file. So our public key and our secret key. So this will tell the intelligent user interface what application it's dealing with. So in order for the intelligent user interface to be able to find that out from our system account, we have to actually grant it permission. So here in the permission grant prompt, it's asking for the application public key. This is the public key of the application you want to grant permission from your system account too. So in this case, the intelligent user interface's public ID is IUI. We find application and we grant permission. So now if we go to manage account permissions, we see that intelligent user interface has been granted permission to use this system account. So this config file is now valid. So we'll save this and we'll open up our conversation router, which is here. So we'll just close all these folders, too many folders open. So if we go back to our desktop, we'll go to our conversation router, and here is a shell. So we're going to execute it. So we're going to say java-jar Osiris conversation router -jar, and then you specify -config, and you point it to your config file. So ours is called config.json. Oh, is there malformation in our config file? Yep, we forgot our dash there. Okay, let's try it again. So just give it a second to boot for the first time. So if we see that router is go message, it means that our config is correct and we can start writing our script. So just give that a moment to boot. So you see there we have the message, conversation processing has started, router is go, awaiting traffic. So that means that it understood who we were, the private key and the public key and the secret key worked. So now we can actually start writing our script. So we open up so this is a simple Java class. It has a main method. It includes the external libraries, Orion Java library and Osiris Java library. So now we're going to write a very simple script that generates a very simple response. So the first thing you need to do in your main method of your conversation script is to get the script context. So script context, and you get this from creating a new context builder dot get current working context. Whoops. So put that back up there. So this context will have the following information inside of it. It'll have the user inputs, what the user typed in on the Osiris website, and it'll also have their Orion key, which we will show you why you need that in a minute. So what we're going to just do to test that we actually get this to work is we're going to create a script result. The script result object returns the result back to the website. So we're going to say script result equals new script result. And we're going to say result.set script response to be I'm replying to you all the way from a jar file on a Windows machine. Pretty straightforward. And we have to set the results Orion key to our context Orion key. And then we say new context builder dot create script result file, and we pass the result. So you see there's 5 lines of code to generate a very, very simple response. So now we're going to save this and we're going to build the jar file. So what you need to do is you need to build your project into an executable jar file. That's very important. And then if we go back down here into our demo project folder, our out artifacts, you see here we have our jar file. So what we need to do is when you've created your executables, you need to create a zip file. You can call it whatever you want. So I'm going to call mine tests.zip. And you need to put your jar file into your zip file. And then you need to put your zip file in the repository that you specified in your config file. We specified this repo folder, so we put it in the repo folder on our desktop. The next step is to actually register that script on the Osiris website. So let's go to the developer portal. We're going to edit our application and we're going to go to the script manager. We're going to add a new script and we're calling this our test script. It's going to run, it's a Java application because we just wrote a JavaScript. We're going to run it on the Windows environment, so we create the connection. We click manage builds and we just grab this key in the URL here. It will be available in the GUI at a later version, but it's just missing in this particular version. So we grab this key. We go back to the developer portal, go edit, go back to your node network builder, view node network visualization, and here we're going to attach a script. Here's our script ID. And we want to attach it to this node here. So let's just grab the ID from the listing here. It's this one here. Is our dynamic node, and establish a connection. So you see here now that there's a connection between our dynamic node, which is our red one, and our conversation script that we've created. So now we want to actually join this dynamic node to an entry node. So we're going to create a quick entry node here. We're going to call it test. Expected input, tell me about yourself, for instance. Or actually, we'll say, where are you? Example user input will be, where are you as well. exception threshold will be 99. We'll show it an example, and it's a start node. We'll save the changes. So we should have a new entry node here now that's loose. So we're going to join that entry node to this dynamic action node. So we'll create a node connection between this, and we'll establish the connection. So you see our network is getting a bit more complicated now. So now we have a connection between them. So if we go back, so the next thing we need to do is actually specify a build for our script. So we add a new build. The version is going to be 1.0. Now the command line. So when your conversation script is executed, it will be executed at this root directory of your zip file. So the command line to execute this jar will simply be demo project.jar, and the path is the name of the zip file. So ours is test.zip, and we're using the local file system provider. So it's very important here you specify your provider. So if you were using an Amazon S3 account, you'd specify S3 here, and then it would pull the scripts down from Amazon S3. So we're using a local file system, and we'll establish a connection, and we'll make the build as active. So that build is now active. So now we can actually go test this. So let's open up a new conversation.
Connection to the Osiris conversation network has been established. You're all set and ready to go.
So let's boot up our router. Give that a moment to boot. So as soon as that boots, we're going to type in the question, where are you? And you'll watch that prompt, and on my machine, it's going to execute the script and return the response. So where are you?
One moment, please. I'm replying to you all the way from a jar file on a Windows machine.
So you can just see how incredibly easy that was. We generated a node network, we installed a conversation router, we deployed the scripts, and that's all we had to do. So now when anyone asks that question, the dynamic node is invoked, one of our routers will pick it up, download the script, execute it, return the result. So let's make the script a bit more interesting. Let's get it to play a YouTube video for the client. So we're going to go up here. We're going to create a custom Osiris method. Test equals new custom Osiris method. So it takes in three parameters. A method name. In this case, you want to use Osiris custom YouTube. You need the Orion key, and you get that again from your context.getOrion verification key. And here it's going to want a YouTube link. So I'm just going to grab the first YouTube link I can find. So it's actually the Tomb Raider Legend theme song. So we're going to pop that in there. And now all we need to say is new Osiris REST Osiris REST API context. Come on. Oh, I spelled Osiris wrong. There we go. Oh, it's not coming up. There it is. So sorry. Test equals new Osiris REST API context, and we'll call this test context. So now what we say is we say test context dot get conversation controller dot call custom Osiris client method, and we pass in our test object. So let's build that script. Sorry, just build artifacts, rebuild. Let's grab the outputted jar file from our artifacts, and let's replace the one that's currently in our zip file with the new version. And let's reboot the conversation router. So now, if we ask the question again, where are you? Watch what happens.
One moment, please.
So we just need to wait for the router to boot up.
I'm replying to you all the way from a jar file on a Windows machine.
So you see there, with adding a few lines of code, I'm able to get the script to put a YouTube video on the client machine and play it. So that's a very simple example of conversation scripts, and the very powerful feature of conversation scripts is that they execute on your own hardware. So you have access to your own internal network. You can do whatever you want with the scripts. You can access APIs that are only available within your private network. They're executed by the conversation router. You have all the context information you need. You can see what the user typed in. You can access the user's information. You can get everything you need, and you can generate response. And you can also call the custom methods like YouTube. You can also do custom methods that will generate graphs for data modeling on the user's page. So there's a lot of features to use here. And what I'm really trying to show with this demo is that with the dynamic action nodes, really anything is possible when you want to generate a response. Thank you very much for watching this tutorial. The next tutorial we will talk more about dynamic action scripts that are more complex and that use a lot of the other APIs, specifically the Orion API. Thank you all very much.